Right, I want to go to Dan Geltrude. He's a great market watcher, but he's also an accountant, so he certainly understands money in and money out. The reason why I want to mention that and have Dan on right now, because you heard about the good news in the employment report, Dan, that average hourly earnings are running at about a 4% uptick year over year. In other words, wages are up 4% year over year, but overall inflation is judged by the consumer price index, that's up close to 5.5%. So all those gains are being eaten away by higher costs at the grocery store and everywhere else. That's the problem for the White House right now, isn't it?
Well, it's a huge problem, not just for the White House, but for everyone in this country. I think the president standing there and taking credit for jobs being created, well, that's really not true. Jobs are not being created, Neil. They're just being restored to back where we were. This would naturally happen based upon the greatest stimulus we have in this situation, which is the vaccine. So to me, there is no reason to continue this mantra of we need more stimulus to get the economy back in place. It's happening naturally. The things that the government is doing and plans to continue to do is only going to increase inflation even more, and people are falling behind because their wages are not keeping up with that inflation rate.
Got it. There's a school of thought, and you just expressed it here, Dan, that the more the government spends, the more prices move up. That hasn't always happened, but that's obviously a big concern right now. But Dan, one other thing that interested me was that no less than Democratic Senator Joe Manchin is pointing fingers at the Federal Reserve. Don't let this get out of control. Do something. The first thing he pointed to, because there's only a couple of things the Federal Reserve can do, is either raise interest rates or stop buying so many Treasury bonds and notes and all this other thing that it's been doing. I cannot see the Fed doing that at this time. But what about you?
I agree, Neil. I don't believe that the Fed is going to stop this a temporary plan of quantitative easing, which is buying back treasuries as well as mortgage-backed securities to the tune of $120 billion a month. Neil, those types of programs that the Fed would put in place, they are there to stimulate the economy. The economy is already moving in the right direction. By continuing that program, what they're doing is going towards overstimulating the economy. So what does that leave the Fed with? Well, that goes to interest rates. Now, when you start to raise interest rates, that has a dramatic impact on what happens. Remember back when we had hyperinflation back in the Carter years, what Paul Volcker, the Fed chairman, had to do back then was actually throw us into a recession with interest rates in order to stop inflation. That's how important it is not to have a hyperinflationary period.
Now, I remember from that bout of inflation, and then before that, the OPEC embargo inflation of the 70s, that the fact is that inflation and this kind of a threat is rarely short-lived or transitory. So when the administration and others are saying that, and it's not just the administration, it's the Federal Reserve, it's top economic officials, you question that. This kind of thing just doesn't go in and out and be done with it, right?
That's true. And let's look at it this way as far as Joe Manchin goes in writing this letter to Jay Powell at the Fed. Yes, it's addressed to Jay Powell, but I think there's a greater meaning here. I think he's sending that to Democratic leadership, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and President Biden, to say, hey, listen, if we're going down this path, you may not have my support. And there is no one more important to legislation in Washington than Joe Manchin. With how tight things are in the Senate, 50-50, nothing goes anywhere without him. Now, he's a politician and a good one. Will he keep his word and actually not vote for these infrastructure bills and other policies? We'll have to see. But we have to take that letter very seriously, or at least the White House does.
Yeah. Having covered him all these years, I always notice he does revert after some threats to just voting in line with Democratic leadership. We'll see what happens here. But Dan, great seeing you, my friend. Dan Geltrude following this. Want to go